one of those girls said, "Are you going to go to Soi Cowboy?" And I said, "What is that?" And so she explained it to me. And at the time, I was single. And I said, "Of course."
What's up, guys, and welcome to the One Night in Bangkok podcast. Tonight, I am joined by my good friend, and tonight we're going to be talking about his experience coming to Thailand for the first time, falling in love, maybe unexpectedly, and the whole story of bringing his soon-to-be wife back to America. If you guys are new here, my name is Eric. I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts, and I've been in Thailand for almost 5 years now. If you're traveling to Thailand soon, or if you want to live here, hit the subscribe button. We've got so many cool guests coming up, and I don't want you to miss anything. Links for everything and everyone we talk about will be down in the description. And if you've got comments, make sure you also drop them down there as well so we can answer all of your questions. Now let's get started. We are both from Boston.
That's right.
And about 4 years ago, almost, I convinced you to make the trip over here to Thailand.
Yes, you did.
And that was probably a good decision, wasn't it?
It absolutely was, man. It completely changed my life in so many unexpected ways.
So can you just give a little background on yourself, like where you're from Boston, but Long Island originally?
Yeah. I grew up in New York on Long Island, and came to Boston when I was 18 to go to college. Fell in love with the town and decided not to go home, and stayed there, and ended up working. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, and you've got some other talents, because how we actually met was through my other business where we do EDM shows.
Yes, sir.
And you were a part of that for a while. So I'll put some photos or videos of that right here so people can see it, because I feel like people here in Thailand have no idea that that's something that, I was doing back in the US. Mm-hmm. So it's cool that you're here, and we were doing that back in the US. So about 4 years ago, this was before COVID, maybe 6 months before COVID, I was kind of trying to motivate you to make the trip out here, because I had already been out here for several months at that point, and I saw how amazing it was out here. And at the time, I feel like you kind of had the attitude of, like, why make such a long flight? Everything is the same in the world at this point. I think that was the quote that you had.
100%, dude. Yeah, we absolutely had that conversation. I was very jaded because I had been a few places, and like the one that sticks out in my mind the most was Dublin, right? I went to Dublin, Ireland, and I was so disappointed because it was, Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and Subway and like whatever, and it was like nothing special. And I was just like, wow. Honestly, I knew nothing about Thailand other than what I had. This is so ridiculous, but other than what I had seen in one of those hangover movies.
Right. That's most people, I think.
Yeah. And it was just like, like crazy partying in Bangkok or whatever. And I was just like, okay, fine. But why is that special? Why would I want to go, 20 something hours across the world to do that? I can do that in any metropolis. And so I was going through, it was just kind of like a rough patch in my life. And you're a great friend of mine, and you saw that, and you were just like, I think you need a change of scenery. And so you suggested Thailand to me. You sold me on it. But what was really kind of wonderful about that experience is that I said yes, and I didn't look up anything. You sent me an itinerary, and I didn't look at any of it. I just said, you know what? I'm going to go in 100% blind, have no clue what this country is going to be like, what we're going to see. Totally new to me, every aspect of it. And so from that day one through the end of that, I think it was here 7 or 8 days with you, that first week, my mind was completely just blown every day.
Yeah, I was thinking from your perspective, it was crazy, because when I came here, I had to figure a lot of things out, and I kind of got into things slowly. But then I think within hours of you landing, we met in Chiang Mai. We were in the back of a pickup truck on the way to a mountain, and then we were like hiking with elephants.
Yes, sir.
Right? And it's going to be wild going from like, okay, you get on the plane, you get off the plane, and now you're on a mountain with elephants.
Bro, it was incredible. It genuinely was. And that was another thing. I didn't know what to expect. I knew I was going to see elephants that day, but to what degree, right? And little did I know that we'd be walking alongside them. And it would be just a private group, you, me, and our friend Sherry.
Yeah, there were 3 of us.
And the fact that we, actually swam with them, bathed them, and it was genuinely amazing. I'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love seeing that in people that come here. It's just like mind blown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so far removed from what we're used to.
Yeah.
in the US.
And what I appreciated about it is that it was clearly very important to you that we went to this particular elephant sanctuary because they didn't let you ride the elephants.
Right. Yeah. So I had been to this one before, and on my initial trip, I did a lot of research because in Thailand, there's a lot of elephants, so-called sanctuaries, where they still really kind of abuse them, including like riding them or making them do tricks or stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, there was none of that.
Right. And there are a few that I think are much better. And maybe they're not perfect, but they're definitely much better. And a lot of times they rescue the elephants from like bad situations. Like I remember at that particular camp, they told me that one of the female elephants they had rescued her because she was part of a logging operation, and she broke her leg on a mountain. And if an elephant is like not useful anymore to a business, they'll probably just like leave it to die or kill it or whatever. So they ended up buying it from this company and then like helping the elephant recover, and then just lives at the sanctuary now.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So from Chiang Mai, we went to we did that thing with elephants. I think we might have gone to like the night market, and then we went down to the islands. We went to not Samui. We went to
Koh Phangan, right?
Penyan. I
pronounce that
cannot
wrong?
say this right because I want to say Pana, which is the other place near Phuket. But yeah, we went down to those islands kind of in the Gulf, and we went to the full moon party.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that, I didn't even really realize this. The hotel we booked, the room was like 10 feet from the speakers of the full moon party.
Yep.
It was like
I don't know.
right
I don't know
beach.
how you slept that night, man. Because
think-
I was the one, I was the one drinking, and you don't drink. And so by the end of the night, I didn't matter how loud the speakers were. I just crashed out. I was good. So I had no idea how you crashed out
I think
that
I
night.
was just so exhausted.
Yeah, probably.
And this is like, it's wild to think about. Like at that time, we were now just like 2 months before COVID started, and nobody had any idea.
No.
And it's like, I appreciate things more now because you never know when moments like that will cease to exist. Right. I thought about that week for a long time because during COVID, it was like, there was nothing like that. You couldn't see friends, you couldn't travel. And we had an epic few days there.
Yes, we absolutely did.
We went to the north. We went to some islands, and then we eventually got back to Bangkok.
Yep.
And I made a list of different things in Bangkok, like various activities, and I think we just like picked off the list. And do you want to talk about where we went that first night?
Are you talking about Soi Cowboy?
I'm talking about Soi Cowboy.
Okay. So that's another thing that I knew nothing about. I actually vaguely remember the conversation. I think we were on a boat, just kind of seeing kind of the more remote islands, and you were doing some photo shoots with a couple of girls. And one of those girls said, "Are you going to go to Soi Cowboy?" And I said, "What is that?" And so she explained it to me. And at the time I was single, and I said, "Of course."
Yeah,
please.
So what's funny about that is I'd already been here for almost a year at that point, and I had never been to Soi Cowboy. I had never been to Nana Plaza. I never been to anything like that because I just heard a lot of bad stories, very negative things. And I had on a previous trip gone to the street like Soi Cowboy, but just the outside, so I could like take pictures of the signs because it's kind of a cool looking street with all the neon signs. And I just walked down the street, and I was kind of like really, I don't want to say scared, but like I was sketched out a little bit because I don't know what they're going to do. Like I've heard stories like they'll drug your drink or like they'll steal something from you or whatever. And so I wouldn't dare go inside. Not to mention they've got security at all the doors. They have like big signs that say like no photos, and it's like can be quite intimidating, I think, if you're not, if you don't know what's what. So I never went before, but when you came, you said, "Okay, let's go." So I said, "Okay."
Absolutely, yeah. I've never seen anything like that before, And I've heard about things like that. Like, I went to Japan, and I know they have like a red light district there or whatever, but there's no foreigners allowed. Like, you're not, you
really?
can't go there. I don't think that there's anything like that in America that I can think of. Actually, probably Vegas, right? But I've never seen it.
Yeah.
And so I was just curious. I was just curious to see it. I didn't know what to expect. Again, I didn't look up anything. Even when your friend told me about it, I didn't Google it or anything. I just said,
probably a
let's
good
just
thing.
go,
I remember the first bar we went to, it's called Crazy. It's still there. And we went super early. We went at 7 p.m. And it was just you and me in this like elderly gentleman. And I was like, this is so bizarre. And I was thinking to myself, like, what a time to be alive. Like this guy, this older guy in the bar, he looked so happy. I don't know what this guy has seen in his life, but I could tell he was happy where he is right now. So good for him.
Yep.
But we didn't stay there very long. We ended up at another bar on the street.
Well, we went to a few, actually.
We poked our heads in.
Yeah.
Just to kind of see what they're like.
And what was so interesting to me is just that there actually genuinely is sort of a mix of experiences, in that the first place that we went to, I think, was like a typical, felt to me at least, like a typical strip club.
Sure.
Right? Where the girls took their tops off or whatever. And then I think the second or third place that we went to was the ping pong show, which was not, I was not into that at all. That was,
I had a weird night. Like the first bar, because when you walk into these bars, like probably within 5 seconds, the girls come up to you and they try to sit with you. Can you buy me a drink? That whole thing. And call me lame, whatever. I'm just not super into it. Okay. It's fine. So I remember a girl came up to me and kind of tapped me on the shoulder. I was like, oh, no, thank you. Then a second girl came over and kind of tapped me on the shoulder. And I said, no, thank you. And then I felt someone tap my shoulder, and I turned this time and they sent a guy over, like a young guy. I don't know if you remember this. And I was like, definitely no thank you. Like, I think they just never saw a guy come in and just not want to talk to any girls or something. So they must have thought I wasn't into girls. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, potentially reasonable assumption. You never know.
Yeah. So then we did go to that ping pong show, right? That's the
very
first
briefly. I think we were only
time.
there like 5 minutes. It wasn't a long time because we were both just like, okay. I mean, this is probably somebody's thing, but definitely not.
I feel like it's
my
one of
thing.
those things that is popular because it has a certain reputation and not because it's actually entertaining whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know who that appeals to. It's certainly not the girls, right? I can't imagine. But yeah, very, very strange. So we got out of there pretty quickly. And then where we ended up for the rest of the night was honestly more like, I feel like, more like a maid cafe, but with dancing.
Sure. I've never been to a maid cafe.
So basically a maid cafe, and I actually haven't either, but like I said, I've been to Japan, and so I'm aware of them. And essentially what they are is, you pay a girl to sit with you and drink with you. That's basically it. And have a conversation. And they don't take their clothes off or anything, and there's no like promise of anything. It's just, you have the company of a female. And so where we ended up was very similar to that, except occasionally the girls would go dance. They never took their clothes off or anything. It was just, hey, you want to sit and talk to this girl? Great, you can. And you can buy her a drink if you want. And then eventually she might go dance, but clothed. And then maybe she'll come back, or maybe she'll go find somebody else if she doesn't like you.
Yeah. So on the way into this bar, I'm walking through the front door. And as I'm walking through the front door, I'll never forget this. I see a girl walking outside. And she kind of had to me like this kind of like Japanese look. And I know that you're kind of into the Japanese thing. You studied Japanese.
Yep.
And you've been to Japan. And I thought to myself, oh, he's going to like her. And I guess I was right, because now you're getting married.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. We're leaving tomorrow, actually, to go back to the U.S.
Yeah. So what a crazy story. I mean, that's like something that, I don't know. I feel like it's almost too good to be true. It
really is, man. Genuinely, the way that I've thought about it so many times over these last 4 years, roughly, it'll be 4 years in November. Roughly over these last 4 years, just it's honestly like you could make a movie out of it.
Yeah,
it's just so bizarre, especially because COVID happened in the middle of it.
So do you want to say her name?
That's such an important part of the story, the COVID
right?
piece.
That like turned the world upside down for everyone, especially if you're trying to be in a relationship with someone on the other side of the planet.
That's the thing. Like I never would have tried to be in a relationship with her if it hadn't been for COVID.
Oh, really?
100%. Because that's just the most unrealistic thing in the world. Like, this girl's 20 something hours away from me.
Right.
And I just think, if I would have had a wonderful time with her, headed back to my country, and just, would have gotten back to life as normal. But what ended up happening is, so actually, let me take a step back. So while we were together, that first night, I just like connected with her in this.
Can we say her name?
Yeah, sure. Her name's.
Okay.
Yep. And so that first night, I connected with her, and there was just like this electricity, like I've never felt in my life, like, and I did kind of, rein myself in a bit, because you have to be careful no matter what. Is like anybody could be putting on an act,
Sure.
and she could just be a really good actor, or actress. And so, I just was like, okay, that was kind of amazing meeting that person that night, but I need to be careful.
And I remember being not like sketched out. That's not the word.
No,
but
not
I
sketched
was
out, of course not.
very cautious at that time.
Cautious.
To the point where like I was kind of just watching to make sure that like nothing bad was going to happen, which, maybe that was a good way to think about it, or maybe not. It's funny now because like they're all our friends now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but
Right.
back then
I
we don't know
love all the
anybody
people at that shop.
Sure. So, and at that time you were just visiting Thailand for like 1 week, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
I
7
think
or
you were
8
going
days.
to Japan after?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you met her that night, and then did we go back the next night? I don't know.
Well, yeah, no, actually we did. Yeah, we had 3 nights in Bangkok, I think. And we saw her for at least some period of time every night.
Yeah.
For the next 3 nights. And it was just because that first night we just hit it off, and she gave me her info. They use an app here called Line, which I had to download and add her. And I basically just chatted with her the next day, let her know where we were going. And she was just like, oh, please come back, and so we did. And, nothing happened, but we ended up coming back to the US, and I still had her information. And, probably a week went by.
So this was November 2019.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So probably a week went by, and I heard from her again. I was just like, oh, that's nice. But again, like I was in my pre-COVID mindset where I was just like, when am I going to get to Thailand again? And how much sense does it make for me to really be talking to this girl? And how much of that experience with her was even, real. But it felt so 100% legitimate. Like there was just this electricity, this rawness and this realness to what I felt in her presence. And so I just, of course, I wrote her back, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna talk to her. We'll see what happens here. But at the same time, I was just like, it seemed unrealistic to me. But then COVID happened, and
Well, hold on a second. Didn't you come back? So that was November.
oh yes, that's
and
right.
Then
yes,
what-
well, yeah,
and
I
then
did come back.
You came back in January.
Yes, that's right. But for Dave Chappelle.
Okay. So what's funny is I had a very similar story when I first came to Thailand to live here. My initial plan was just to come for 1 month. Mm-hmm. And then the 1 month turned into like 7 weeks.
Yep.
And I went back to the US, and the first day back in the US, it started snowing, and I was like, this is awful.
Yep.
And I was like, I have to figure out a way. I don't know how, because it makes no sense, but I need to figure out a way to get back to Thailand. And within about another month, I was on the plane back to Thailand. And it's funny because the same thing happened to you.
Right,
You
100%.
came in November.
Yep.
And then by like mid-January, you were back
but
on the plane.
100%. But the motivate, well, there was definitely a twofold motivation. It was the fact that, she messaged me even after I left, and we started talking again. And I was just like, wow, that's kind of wild that this girl wants to reach out to me and talk to me. And I'm going to see where this goes. But then you posted on Facebook sometime in December that Dave Chappelle was going to be in Bangkok in January, I think. Was it January?
Yep.
And so that was just like a spark where I was just like, wow. So I'm hitting it off with this girl who's, it really given me, something that I've never felt before. And my favorite comedian happens to be playing in this town, and we're somehow able to get like 10th row tickets.
No, we had third row. We had
Was it?
third
Yeah.
row seats for like
It was
not
crazy.
that much money, right?
Yeah. We would have paid thousands of dollars
Yeah.
for those tickets in the US, and we paid like $100 or something
Yeah.
like that. And it was just like, how do I pass that up? How do I pass up that opportunity to see this girl again, see my favorite comedian again, and continue to experience this country that I knew nothing about, that you showed me, and that I was all of a sudden in love with. And so came back here, and thank you for reminding me of that, actually. So came back here, saw the show, and then ended up going with her to Pattaya for a few days, which was wonderful. And actually taught her how to swim. that over those few days she had never really swam before, which was totally adorable. And just again, like had an incredible experience with her. And so then COVID happened. So my apologies for
Right.
skipping that little chapter. But yeah, so you're right. So we did have those two experiences together. But what I was trying to say about, how I kind of felt like this would not have been the most realistic relationship if not for COVID is that because of COVID, everybody in the world was locked down, right? So there was literally zero chance of me meeting anybody other than if I were to just try to go on like Tinder or something like that. And then even if you're going to go on Tinder, where are you going to go?
Right.
Where are you going to
Well,
go?
I that's exactly what I did, and it did not end up very well.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, so I'm just like, okay, well, I have this really amazing connection with this girl. She's halfway across the world. Sure. However, I'm not going to meet anybody else in my own country. So I'm just going to pursue this and see where it goes. And so over the next year, we just continued talking, and it continued to progress. And I started to see what a real and genuine, incredible person this woman is, or was at the time, but continues to be today, where she just kind of showed me that, she isn't or wasn't what you had potentially heard about on Soi Cowboy
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a second, because so many guys, I feel like in other videos online or whatever, they have this very narrow view of what these girls are like in places like Soi Cowboy and Nana Plaza. And I will say everything you read is true, but for a percentage of them.
Right.
And I would say there's a big spectrum.
For sure.
And there's some people at one end of the spectrum and some at the other. Yep. And it's not always easy to tell, who's who, especially in the beginning.
Yep.
But like we've spent a lot of time in these bars now because she's working there. We became friends with her friends. And I think for me anyway, because, I'm not like a big drinker and because I'm living here, it was easier for probably me than a lot of people to become like friends with a lot of these people, these girls in the staff and everything, versus someone that's just coming here for like a few days. So I felt like I really get to see behind the scenes, and the girls would tell me a lot of things that, I think most people don't know about like what goes on. But it's true. Like some of these bars, some of these girls, they're really, really hardcore. They're really trying to make as much money as they can. It's cutthroat. They're providing as many services as they can sell. But other times, a lot of these girls literally show up, have drinks with customers, and then just go home.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And some of them make no money, and some of them, I think, make a considerable amount of money. So it's really hard to talk about this topic in any one way. So I just wanted to point out that, like, we're not saying that everything out there is false, but there is a lot of diversity in this part of the scene here.
Absolutely. And her story and the story of some of her closer friends from Soi Cowboy are basically just that they are from remote parts of Thailand where the opportunity to earn an income is very reduced, and especially as a woman in this country. And so what she ended up doing is, again, she's originally from a very remote area. Her family has a farm, and they do okay, but it's certainly they were definitely like having a difficult time. And so she took it upon herself to come to Bangkok to try to help her family. And so she started out in much more menial jobs of like, cleaning houses or washing dishes. She actually made jewelry for a time. She made clothing for a time, and, was basically just trying to continue to raise her income more and more, but with the intent of helping her parents and, helping to kind of lift them up economically. And that is absolutely the story of many of the girls at Soi Cowboy.
Yeah.
That they are just trying to help their families who are in these more remote areas of Thailand, who are likely farmers and who are having a tough go of it generally.
Yeah.
And the opportunity to earn at Soi Cowboy just by sitting with customers and having some drinks, not compromising yourself, is way better than most opportunities that are out there for women here. And so, and she actually had no idea that Soi Cowboy even existed for the majority of her youth. But at some point in her late 20s, she met someone who heard her story, understood what she was trying to do for her family, understood that, she was just trying to make money to help rebuild their home, to give them a proper place to live. And she was just like, look, I know this is going to kind of be a culture shock for you, but I work at this place called Soi Cowboy. And if you come there and you can learn how to drink, because that was something that I actually had never done. If you can learn how to drink and, kind of keep drinking for the majority of the night, if not all night, then, men will come and they will buy you drinks and they just want to talk to you. And all you have to do is sit and talk and occasionally get up and dance, keep your clothes on, and you will be able to help your family tremendously. And so she agreed reluctantly, and she actually quit multiple times because it was so difficult for her. She was shy. A lot of the people who come through Soi Cowboy are not Thai. And that was, she could speak this kind of local rural language. I believe it's called Isaan is the language. She can speak Lao and she can speak Thai, or at the time she could. She's learned Japanese and English since. But, most of the people coming through didn't speak those languages. And so she just felt incredibly uncomfortable. And also she didn't know how to really hold her alcohol. And so it was just a really difficult thing for her. So she quit after like a couple of days. And then her friend convinced her to try it again. And this time, I think she made it a couple of weeks, or I think roughly a couple of weeks. And then she quit again because she just felt so uncomfortable. It was just such a culture shock for her. But again, her friend was like, look, I understand but I also understand that you're trying to help your family here. Like I know that's your goal. Think about the money you just made in those 2 weeks. Think about the fact that you were so uncomfortable and yet, and because of that discomfort, weren't able to get people to sit and have drinks with you all night. You just had a few customers. But the money that you were able to make during that time is probably like 3 times what you made, whether it was sewing shirts, building jewelry, whatever. And she convinced her again. So she went back the 3rd time. And I think that was the time where it stuck.
Let's quickly break down how the girls actually make money, because I think this is also, there's a misconception around this. And again, this might not be the same for every bar, and the deals are a little different. But generally what I've seen is the girls get a small salary, a monthly salary,
right,
just to show up and work X amount of days.
Yep.
And usually they're working like 6 days a week. Is that right?
Well, she worked 7 actually.
Okay.
Yeah, she would take off like two days a month, I think.
Okay. And that's hard. I mean, basically in a super loud club, dancing, drinking every night. I mean, that's going to be brutal.
Yep.
And then they've got what they call lady drinks. So when a customer comes in, they'll approach the customer and sit with them and talk and say like, oh, can you buy me a drink? Something like that. And those drinks are at inflated prices. They're not like a price of a normal drink. You know, they might be double or something. It's about double or triple the price of a normal drink. And out of that, the girls get a commission, right?
Yes.
Okay. So like, I don't know what drinks even go for now. Like how much is a lady drink?
I think like 300 baht.
Yeah. It could be like 200 to 300 baht. And out of that, what do you think the average commission is?
I think 180 baht.
Oh, really? I thought it was a lot. I've heard it's more like 100, but again, it probably varies from bar to bar.
Honestly, that could be my memory failing
so
me.
let's just say they get between 100 and 200 baht commission per drink. And then they're trying to make a lot of drinks per night. So like, what's a good night? Like how many drinks?
At that time, she could really hold her liquor.
Yeah.
She hasn't done that in a while. So I've got to think. I think she said that at her peak, she was able to drink like 30 drinks.
Oh my God. But also a lot of the times they're not, from what I've seen, they're not even drinking alcohol. Like especially as it gets later.
Well, What do you mean?
Okay, I'm giving away all the dirty secrets
Yeah.
here. So especially like,
Oh, you're talking about when they just like drink water?
yeah. So like
sure,
the customer will buy them a drink, they'll order like a tequila shot or something,
Right, and it'll be water.
or like
for
a
sure.
watered down tequila shot or
Right.
something.
Yep.
And the customer doesn't know. But I mean, how else could these girls do like
Right,
30 drinks a night?
Yeah, exactly.
It's you know, it's crazy.
Yep.
So so they get the salary, they get the commission on the drinks, and then some girls, but not all girls, will leave the bar with customers, and the customers pay a bar fine, which is basically the fee to take the girl out of the bar.
Right.
And then the girl may also charge like an additional amount to the customer after that. So that's kind of like quick overview of how the bar girls make money. And I've heard from different girls, like different bars have different, they're looking for different things. Like I met someone who went to work at one bar in Soi Cowboy, and they were really strict. They wanted a certain amount of drinks per week, and they wanted a certain amount of bar fines per week. They wanted the girl to go with a certain amount of customers per week. And she was like not into that. And so she ended up going to a different bar, and that was much more relaxed, which is based, they told her you can just kind of show up and do whatever. And if you don't want to come to work, if you don't want to go to customers, that's totally fine. You'll just get paid, you know, based on whatever you want to do.
Yeah, right.
So there really is like a huge spectrum.
Yep.
So, and I also want to say, because I know probably a lot of people are going to say like something like, oh, you know, she just pulled the wool over your eyes. You
Yeah,
don't
no
know.
doubt.
I can attest. I've been in these places when she doesn't know I'm there, and I've never seen her do anything bad. You know, she's very, I think people forget like Thailand is a very conservative culture.
Yeah.
So when that's not abnormal to me now, like thinking about it that way. But I think a lot of the outsiders think that all the girls here are exactly the same. And it's just not true.
Nope.
I mean, there are, on the other hand, some girls that are exactly what you've read about online.
100%.
And I'm not going to say her name now, but it starts with a C. She worked at the same bar. She had blonde hair at the time. And she's kind of, in my eyes, she's kind of infamous at this bar because she's probably like the number one girl at this bar in terms of sales. And I never talked to her for a while. And I think she never really talked to me because she knew I wasn't going to be like a customer. And so she didn't want to waste the time. But there was a slow night. And I just chatted with her for like 30 minutes. And I was shocked to find out that she has family in the US and she can go there if she wants. But she doesn't want to because she thinks her life is so great here in Bangkok. She just drinks every night, parties. You know, I just saw her on Instagram earlier. She was posting a picture of like all this alcohol and I don't want to say it, but like the green stuff. You know, she's just living the party life, right? And that is a very different kind of life and so it's interesting, like when you see behind the scenes, you really start to see the differences, but from the outside it can look all the same. But I think foreigners, when they come here, a lot of them get into trouble because it's very hard to know the difference between all of these girls and their actual motivations. So I think you got very lucky.
100%. Yeah, I mean, just for me, it was just all about that year that we spent locked down and the time that we spent kind of just getting to know each other and getting to understand each other's cultures and the differences between us. And that time, you know, like I said, is 100% why this relationship even flourished.
Yeah, because now that you explain it that way, I never thought about this. Like if COVID didn't happen, what probably would have happened to you is you probably would have just been the classic holiday boyfriend where you travel to Thailand, while you're here, you meet a girl, you travel around Pattaya, Phuket, whatever, and then you go back to your home country, back to your normal life, and then that kind of just fades away.
Right.
And then maybe she'll go on and meet someone else and the whole cycle repeats itself. But because of COVID, her work stopped, your life kind of stopped, you weren't going out, you were at home, and you had the time and ability to kind of make this like this deeper bond. So it's sort of a weird blessing in disguise.
100%, man. It was very, very bizarre. This tragic global event that made everybody's lives more difficult, sometimes tragic. It ended up being bizarrely a blessing for me, because that's how I ended up on this track that I'm on. And so we spent that year where we were fully locked down, You know, like you said, she couldn't work because all of Thailand's nightlife was shut down. She went back to her hometown and stayed with her parents. And that was another reason that I got to know that she was being 100% legitimate with me about her whole story, is because I got to see it all.
I remember you sent me photos of her like in the rice field.
Yeah, exactly.
And that like blew my mind, because where we come from, girls that look like her are not doing like manual labor like
exactly,
that.
Yeah. And she was in there, you know, and that's how I knew like she was fully committed to her family, to helping her parents, because she was in the fields. She was helping to harvest the corn, or to clean the rice, or to put down fertilizer. You know, she was catching fish with her hands out of the mud, and, you know, just showing me all of this. And I was just blown away by her character. She wasn't this like, I'm too good for this, I'm beautiful, I should just be taken care of like a princess. She was just like, no, if I can't work in Bangkok, I'm gonna work for my family.
Yeah,
and
I love that.
It was just like incredible to see.
So in coming from a big city in the US, it's like such a big difference. But for you, like, you obviously have had relationships before. What are the big differences that stood out for you between relationships with American women and then coming to Thailand and experiencing this?
I mean, it's vast. And that was, I'll be honest, like one of the things that drew me in so incredibly. And you know, it's different tastes, right? Like everybody has their own type, right? But my experience, you know, and I'm not speaking about all Thai women, because I did not date all Thai women. I just dated one. But this particular woman is just, she's so focused, and forgive me, I maybe sound like a broken record, but she's so focused on family. Like that is everything to her. And that was just beautiful to see. And what I experience in the States, and I'm not even saying this about women, just generally, everybody is so focused on the culture, you know? And whether that means like music, movies, politics, YouTube, whatever, it's just, that's the focus. And she couldn't care less about any of that stuff. When we were talking over Line, the app that everybody uses here, that's what we used to video chat. When we were talking over that, I would ask her those questions, like, who's your favorite musician? What's your favorite movie? Do you have a favorite YouTuber? All this stuff. And her answer was always like, I don't have one. It's just like, well, what do you do with your time? I work. What? Okay, amazing. Okay. And so her constant focus always was family, 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 family. And I've never met anybody like that in the States. Not a single person. Everybody in the US is just culture, you know, and it was just so incredibly refreshing to me. It blew my mind, genuinely. I know I said that earlier, but it did. It really did. I was shocked by it, and it helped me to understand why that electricity was there, because I can't say that at the time I was removed from the culture, but I am now.
Yeah.
And she inspired that in me.
So there's a big word going around, passport bro, this phrase. And I think I asked you before, have you heard of this before or no?
It sounds familiar. I think it came up in conversation with us once, but I don't
passport
remember
bro
what it
is kind of like a derogatory term that a lot of women in America or the West use towards men that leave their home country to go to places like Southeast Asia, South America, wherever, to find a romantic partner. And when I came here, I didn't care about that. I didn't care about meeting someone or whatever. That's not why I came here. But once I got here, I realized why so many guys come to Asia or other places to like seek a relationship. I thought initially maybe it was because the way they look, like they're into like Asian look or something like that. And although that could definitely be part of it, because especially like the health standard here is a lot different than the US, I think, as far as like body types, I think most of the attraction is the cultural difference. That's the most shocking thing to me. I've had a lot of moments like you where something happened that is totally normal for them that I was like taken aback. Like, you know, I could give stupid examples, but just things that I would never see in the US that I was shocked that like a girl here did. And the reason she did it was either because of her family or because as a sign of respect, or she wants to show her commitment or devotion or something like that. Things you just don't see in the West. So I can totally relate to you on those things. Now you got a chance to go up to her hometown, right? So she's from Isaan. She's from Isaan, Sisaket to be specific. And what was it like the first time you went up there? Like, did you know, I mean, did you like look up ahead of time, like what lifestyle was like out there?
No, not at all.
No, because even in Bangkok, I mean, we're in a big city, but there's still some like pretty stark differences than like Boston. But when you go to Isaan, that's totally like, that's like another planet. So what was that like?
Well, I mean, I have to say, like I said, you know, we spent that year where she was in her hometown. So, and I got to see it kind of over the phone. And so it wasn't like a total surprise to me, you know, I had a year of exposure to it, but experiencing it in person obviously is a totally different experience. And so, you know, what it is it's again, kind of, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Life in Isaan, the best way to describe it is it's quiet. It's extremely quiet. There, and you know, the soundtrack is not traffic, and it's not you know, music. It's animals. It's insects. It's crickets. And you know, it's everybody's just kind of living a very slow-paced kind of lifestyle when they're not obviously working hard at their farms. You know, when they're back home, you know, it's not this kind of, I don't know if it's specifically her family or what, but it's not this just like constant chatter, you know, and that's kind of what I am used to in the States. Is just, and this is something that I've come to greatly appreciate. And, you know, I was just there for 3-4 days, and what struck me about it, and I've started to really come to terms with it and appreciate it, is just that sometimes you'll just sit in silence and just appreciate your surroundings. Whereas I feel like in the States, it's always like, well, there's something on TV.
Right.
And, or we're having a conversation, or we're debating something, or I've got music playing, or I'm at the gym, and we're constantly going. At least that's how I am. And I feel like that's how the U.S. culture generally is that we're always going. It's go, 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 go. It's, okay, I'm going to the work, I'm going to the office, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to a restaurant, I'm going to meet a buddy, going home, putting on some YouTube videos, going to bed, getting up the next day, doing it again. And when I just went there for 3-4 days, my day was, okay, wake up, come outside to the porch, sit, and just kind of take in the view. Maybe have, you know, some sticky rice and, you know, some, you know, an omelet. And then maybe take a trip to a temple, walk around a little bit, pray. Go down to the river, take in the view, come back to the house, maybe eat something again. No TV, no debate, no chatter. You know, some small talk here and there. Oh, wow, that's beautiful.
They don't have Fox News, CNN, MSNBC.
No.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's beautiful. And it just, I loved so much, and I love so much that difference. And I honestly, like, we're going back to the US to marry, but I kind of wish I didn't have to. I wish that it was possible to stay here and continue to have the opportunities that I do financially, but maintain that lifestyle, that quiet, slow-paced, when you're not working, obviously, kind of lifestyle.
Let me ask you about a few specific things about the Isaan experience that so I've never been to Isaan, but I've been to some other rural parts of Thailand. So I think these are kind of similar. Where did you sleep? Was it in a bed or on the floor?
Well, it was on the floor, but I mean, there were, blankets and things like that under us to kind of soften it.
Okay. And I think the most notorious part of the Isaan experience is the bucket shower.
Yes, sir.
So what did you think when you first tried that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be honest. This is just kind of like my spoiled U.S. mindset. Is that when I first went there, I said no.
You said no?
Yeah,
oh,
I know.
no.
I'm ashamed of it. I feel so terrible. But I was just like, I was like, I need hot water. Like I need it. I'm just like a creature of habit. And, I've broken that down. So like this past time I did actually, and I enjoyed it actually. But the first time I went, I was just like, I need hot water. So we went to a nearby hotel and I just took a shower there. But after that, I was just like, why am I being like this?
I feel like I'm kind of surprised.
Oh man.
So when I went with someone invited me to go somewhere to their family house, it was kind of the same situation. In fact, the house didn't even have like 4 walls. It was semi-open. And so we slept on the floor in basically the open air. And then same kind of shower, bathroom situation, just bucket, cold water. But the way I thought about it is it's uncomfortable because it's not what you're used to. But for me, one of the best parts about being here is that you get to experience how other people live.
Right.
And so even if I feel like I don't like this, I kind of enjoy it in a way that's like, okay, I want to understand how these people, what's normal for them. So yeah.
Yeah, and what I didn't realize, and it's so stupid, right? But I'm just so used to it in the States that we live in constant air conditioning, right? And so a hot shower every day of the year feels great. But when I was in Isaan that first time, and I was just like, I can't do that. I need a hot shower. I absolutely sweated my face off in that shower. It was terrible because even at that hotel, there was barely any air conditioning, and it was just the hottest room in the hottest shower. And I was just like, this is terrible. This is uncomfortable. What was I thinking?
How did her family receive you? Were they happy?
Incredibly warmly.
Were they okay? I wasn't sure if they'd be skeptical. Or...
No. They were incredibly sweet. Because before I met them, we had spent over a year talking on the phone while she was at home. And so, they got to see me on the phone with her and eventually every day. At first it was like, once a week, and then it was a couple times a week, and then it was every day. And so, they got to see me on the phone with her sometimes for hours at a time. And they were just like, wow, this is something else. Like, this guy actually really does care about her because he's making sure to get on the phone with her every day, sometimes twice a day. And I would, try to, they couldn't speak English at all, of course, like she can. But I would, I've tried to learn a few Thai phrases and just to interact with them a bit. And they always just were excited to see me. And so when they finally greeted me into their home, they did so incredibly warmly. Hugs and welcoming me with food, and it was wonderful.
That's really cool. So how many times have you been up there?
3.
And there's no airport, is there, in Sisakit?
No.
So how do you get there? Train
or just driving?
And how far from Bangkok is it?
Far. It's about 9 hours.
Driving?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So that would be like Boston to Washington, D.C. or something like that?
Yeah.
I mean, for her, this also has to be a wild experience because I'm going to guess that 4 years ago, she never thought she'd be leaving Thailand.
Not a million years.
To go live in America, of all places.
Not a million years.
Are you ever concerned that maybe she won't like America? Maybe it's different than what she thinks it is?
No, absolutely.
Because she's never been there. It's not like she's visited and then... one thing I talk about with a lot of people is, for us, we come to Thailand because we like Thailand. So if we meet someone here, it's not really an issue for us to live here, right? But for someone like, or a lot of the women in these situations, they might meet a guy from Germany, from France, from Switzerland, wherever, and maybe they like the guy, but they don't want to go live in Germany. So it kind of creates this issue, like, what do you do? For you, so when you go back, you're not even living in Boston, like
No,
the city.
outside of Boston now. Yeah,
now.
I was in downtown Boston for quite some time, but I moved out a few years ago, and I'm now closer to the South Shore.
Yeah, and I think about this sometimes because I'm not even sure if that's better or worse. Because on one hand, if you're in the city, maybe there's like a larger Thai community, but it also can be like quite a culture shock.
Right.
And where you are, which is like a quieter town,
Yep.
Not that it's like Isaan, but it's more similar, I think, to that pace of life. It's like a little slower, a little quieter. So either way, it's going to be a wild. I mean, she's never even been on a plane for more than like a few hours, more than like 6 hours, right?
Yeah, she went to Japan.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's the only place she's been.
Yeah. Tell me about the visa process.
Oh, man.
Because you started applying for this visa
2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's been quite the journey. When I first started the process, what I saw online was that it was going to take like 9 to 12 months or something like that. But that was all that information was pre-COVID. So of course, COVID, shut down the world for a while, shut down, I think, if I recall correctly, the visa process. And so there was just what I imagine is just a giant backlog eventually when they started back up again. And we were just caught in that. And so the whole thing from end to end took about 2 years. And so at first it was just, pretty simple paperwork. But then it was, just submitting that all and then it was just waiting. And what the most difficult thing about it was just the waiting game had no end in sight. It was basically just like, you can come back and check on your status on this date, which was like 12 months after I applied. And I said, okay, well, that's lengthy, but it is what it is. And then, when I went back to check on it, it had been extended, and it was like, come back in 6 more months.
And that's got to be frustrating for her because she doesn't know how the U.S. government works.
Sure.
She probably thinks that you're making it up. Like you told her you're going to do something, and then you really didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I never really got that impression from her. She seemed to believe what I was saying to her, and also because you can see this stuff online, right? So I would just send her screenshots of just like look at what happened. The new date is 6 months from now, but of course Photoshop exists, right? So I could have doctored that up, I guess. But no, I mean our relationship was such that we had faith in each other. We had spent, of course, like we didn't get engaged, until about, like I said, it's been 4 years. So 2 years after we met. And so those 2 years, we built up a level of trust.
Yeah. And also I want to mention, if it wasn't clear, you didn't come to Bangkok like for 2 1-week trips and then get engaged.
Oh, no.
Like you were back multiple times for months at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. In between there.
Yeah, for sure.
And
so
even I remember, because the country was pretty closed during COVID, you couldn't enter on a tourist visa.
Yep.
So like as soon as it was like
it
reopened,
was instant. Yeah,
you were like
both
okay.
of us.
Yeah,
both of
yeah.
us. You beat me here though. You got here like a month before I did. I was jealous.
Yeah.
But yeah. So as soon as the country opened, you were here in a flash. It took me a little more time. I had to get some things situated back in the States, and so then came over here for roughly 3 months, and so we essentially lived together for those 3 months. She still wasn't working. And so, those 3 months were just like where the relationship truly flourished, and we really got to explore the country together, and saw a lot of stuff that she hadn't even seen, which was amazing. So we went to Kanchanaburi, we went to Saraburi, we went to Khao Yai, we went to Rayong, we went to Kolan, just really everywhere, and it was just remarkable. I mean, this country is so insanely beautiful, and I feel like maybe I'm the only one who didn't know that, but I feel like it's a hidden gem.
Well,
and
you
maybe
see-
I'm crazy.
You
to
see a
think
lot of
that,
like the
but
postcard photos of like the islands in the south and stuff like that. But I think the really unique thing about Thailand is it's big enough to have all these different areas, but small enough with Bangkok right in the middle that it's very easy to get everywhere. Like basically within
Yeah,
a
right.
1 hour flight,
Yeah.
I can be in Phuket, I can be in Chiang Mai, I can be in wherever in Thailand. And there's kind of like a different sort of life for everyone here. If you want to live out in the country, you can. If you want to live on an island, you can. If you want to live in the big city, you can. It's such a unique place. And the fact that it's developed so rapidly in the past 20 years that now it's like much closer, or at least in Bangkok, the lifestyle here can be much closer to what we have in the US. So it's not even like such a sacrifice to live here like it was like maybe 30 years ago. So now after COVID, she's not working at Soi Cowboy anymore. She's
No.
working at
So-
like a Japanese bar, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like a karaoke bar. And, that was partly at my insistence. But she was happy to do it. I didn't honestly have to insist. I was just like, look, I do feel like, like I said, the maid cafe style work is not terrible. And a lot of the girls there, still working there, are wonderful people. I consider them friends. Some of them even have just normal day jobs, working at pharmacies and things like that. And this is just, similar to Kalaya, their way of helping their families or help raise their children. And so, I'm not insulting the work at all by any means. But it was just by that point, things had gotten serious enough where I was just like, I would appreciate it if you took on a job where it was something you could potentially parlay into work in the US if things continue to progress. And so now she's a bartender.
Okay. And also,
Well, it was actually. So she's quit now. We're leaving tomorrow. So
sure, but that was
Yeah.
a really smart idea for no other reason than being in that Soi Cowboy environment. There can be a lot of bad influence, even from the other girls.
Sure.
And not saying that, she fell into that or anything, but the longer you're there, I feel like it can be risky and it's kind of like a black hole that sucks you in.
That too.
So it's great that she kind of took this like transition outside of that. So
Yeah.
that's great.
yeah, and and it's work that she's learned how to make drinks and things like that, and that's nothing she had done before, and that's something that she can potentially do
Yeah.
in the States.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that ends up happening,
So
or if
is she
she's interested.
is she
in something
nervous about going to the States? Does she ask you a lot of questions about it?
Nervous more honestly about like I said about her, everything is family. So the nerves are more about her inability to, it's 9 hours, right? So it's not like she could get to her family that quickly, but now it's 22 hours to get back
Yeah.
to her family. That's the thing she's most nervous about is, what if something happens? What if there's an emergency? That's the biggest worry. And the cold.
For me, this is sort of unreal because it's sort of like when Marvel does a movie, like a crossover movie. Like they've got like the Spider-Man universe and like the
Yeah.
Batman universe, and now they're in one movie. Like my Thailand universe is now merging with my American Boston universe.
Right,
Now
totally.
they're gonna be like she's probably gonna be friends with all of our
Yeah,
friends
I hope
there,
so. I
and that
hope
is
so.
a crazy thing for me to think about.
It's wild.
Because 5 years ago, if you asked me like, what are the chances of this happening? I'd be like, what are you smoking? Like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
it's so, crazy the way life works like that. So, okay, $1 million question that I want to know from you. You've spent a lot of time in Thailand now, like months and months and months over the
this
last
is
few
my
years.
7th trip.
Yeah. Do you ever see yourself like moving here permanently or like whether during retirement or even sooner? Because and the reason I ask this, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the US right now that's not so great. And I think a lot of people are kind of getting burnt out by it and are looking for like an escape hatch.
I don't really think of it that way, to be honest with you. And part of it is kind of going back to what I was saying before of how she has inspired me to kind of leave the culture, right? So like all that stuff that I think a lot of people are kind of caught up in right now and feeling a lot of anxiety about, I don't even participate in. Like I'm done with politics. I'm not going to debate people on, where the country should go, what policies we should have, all that stuff. I'm not, or what movie should be number one and whatever messaging is in the movies and all that stuff. I'm done with it. So that's not the biggest concern for me, because I've already removed myself from it. But I would love to, as I was kind of saying before, right? I would love to make this lifestyle my lifestyle, but the difficulty is just it's very difficult to get a good paying job here as a foreigner. And that's a policy that I kind of admire about the Thai government, that they have rules in place where essentially a job is not to go to a foreigner if a Thai person can do it. And that's to protect their citizens from, losing their jobs to an influx of foreigners. And so I respect that, but that makes it very difficult for somebody like me to come over here. I don't have the luxury of being a YouTuber like you. I have a standard kind of 9-to-5 job. And so, that if I were to try to take that skill set and bring it over here, it would be challenging for me to kind of get into that industry, and to make a wage where I could, support Kalai and I and our family, hopefully, our hopeful family. And so for that reason, I don't expect that I would come back here in the immediate future, because I need to earn a living and I need to save for our future. But I absolutely love this country. I love the culture. And so I definitely want to get back here. It's just going to take me longer, because I'm going to have to save a lot of money, and I'm going to have to learn the language, and I'm going to have to make more connections. And so my plan is essentially over the next 10 to 20 years, or hopefully less, but I think that's a realistic timeline. Somewhere in that is to kind of get myself fluent, and to make connections, make inroads, as we come back here, annually, to the point where I could come back here and potentially work or then retire here.
Yeah, that's great. And it's great that you're thinking about like a long-term plan. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people rush into things and then they move here and then they're not really ready, and then it kind of falls apart. But yeah, you've got time. So
got time. That's right.
And she's going to be with you now, so it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling that story. I think I really wanted you to tell the story because these are the real life stories that I see. And I'm just so sick of, a lot of these things on blogs or comments and other videos that, I'm not saying those things don't happen, but you rarely hear a story like this. So thank you for sharing that.
No, absolutely. And I do just want to say, just kind of as a closing comment, that actually wanted to be here for this, but she's kind of nervous still about her English. And but she encouraged me to do it because she wanted the message to get out there that there are so many good people at places like Soi Cowboy. She said that to me specifically. She said, like, I love my community there, and I love those girls, and we're good people. And I think there's a lot of misconception about who we are, why we're here. And I want that to be told. I want people to know that we have good hearts, that we're not here to steal people's money, to do bad things. Of course, there, like any job, like even my job, right? I'm sure there's people who are doing bad stuff on the weekends or whatever. So any job, there's going to be people who who don't have the best character. But it was just really important to her that I come here and tell our story and get the word out there that these girls are good girls, and they have great hearts, and oftentimes they're just taking the job that gives them the opportunity, or the best opportunity, to make a difference in their families' lives in these remote towns or villages or whatever you want to call them, where their opportunities are so small. And this is really their best chance to make that difference. And they're not in it to get wasted. They're not in it to do drugs. They're not in it to meet a million dudes. They're in it literally to just help their families. And I think that's honorable. And I think she's an incredibly remarkable person. And so that's why I wanted to come and tell our story, because she wanted me to.
Guys, if you want to hear more real life stories from here in Bangkok, hit the subscribe button and check out this video right here.